Hello friends and fellow missionaries, this is Trevor Owen with another Mission Minute for you. Now I'm sure you can tell by looking around that it's awfully cold here. In fact, it was 6 degrees above 0 Fahrenheit last night, and it didn't get above freezing all day long, and it's supposed to get colder throughout the next week. It makes me really glad I'm taking off for 5 weeks of short-term missions to Honduras and the Dominican Republic next Thursday. But even in the midst of all this cold and the people complaining about it, look at how well we do at insulating ourselves. I mean, I've got my coat on, I've got layers, I've got gloves, I've got a heated car, we've got houses, that's not mine, but we've got houses that are insulated and central heating. We're really good at insulating ourselves from the environment around us. As we look to go on the mission field, I'm going to tell you that you're going to find the environment a little bit off-putting and hostile. The cultural norms that we have in our lives, the ways we orient ourselves, the ways we determine who's a good person and who's not, and who's happy and who's sad and who likes us and who doesn't, and all those things that help orient us in our world are going to be different. Other people, other places literally see the world and understand each other differently. And when we come from the U.S., there's usually a uncomfortableness to that. The technical term is cultural dissonance. But there's this clashing of what we expect and think are norms with what they expect and think are norms. The question is, what do we do with that? The story is told in Acts that Peter is at Simon the tanner's house. Now Peter is the disciple who's been Jewish his whole life. He's been, done his best to be a great Jew. And he's already stretching himself. He's staying in a tanner's house, which would be an unclean Jewish person. And as he's at this house, he gets hungry, and they're making him lunch, and he goes up on the roof, and he falls asleep, and God gives him this vision of a sheet being lowered down with all these unclean animals. And he says, "Peter, get up, kill, and eat." And 3 times Peter says, "Lord, I've never eaten anything unclean. I can't do this." And God says, "Don't call unclean what I have called clean." Well, if you know the rest of the story, Peter wakes up and he finds out that there's some Gentiles that have been sent by another dream and vision to come and get him and take him to this Gentile place. And he goes and he's breaking all the Jewish norms and traditions, and he goes into this house and he experiences the power of God falling on these people who he thought through his whole life were unclean. And at the end, he says, "I now understand that God is the God of everybody. That I understand that God's at work," and this is Trevor's paraphrase, but that God is at work throughout the world, and that I was calling things unclean that really weren't unclean. So what does that have to do with our mission? What does that have to do with our environment? You see, when we go out, there is a cultural dissonance that happens. And we have a tendency to kind of, insulate ourselves from that. We hang out with the Americans that are there that speak our language, that we understand, how we interact. We pass judgment on the things around us. "Oh, I like that, and I don't like that, and they should do that, and they shouldn't do that. Why do they do that way?" We guard ourselves with fear and carefulness, trying not to engage too much and not sure how we're going to be received. We kind of create a space bubble. You see, these are all ways, just like my coat, my gloves, and our houses, that we insulate ourselves when we're in a foreign place. And when we do that, what we miss is the revelation that Peter had. When we do that, we miss the revelation that says, God is bigger. So my challenge to you as we look at going on to mission is to take our eyes off of protecting ourselves and our comfort and our little space, and instead be thinking, where is it God work here even when I'm uncomfortable? What is it that we need to do to, take our gloves off even though it gets cold. To begin to uninsulate ourselves so that we are open to the environment around us. Now, I promise, none of the leaders are going to let you freeze to death out there. None of them are going to let you go crazy. But maybe there's a place in coming with the mentality of, I'm going to fully enter here. Not passing judgment, not insulating myself, but with the intention of being present. That'll make all the difference in the world for us. Wherever you're at, whatever's going on, whatever trips you have ahead, stay on mission and fully enter. We'll see you around.